Sir, we're grateful to all 5 candidates for mayor joining us today in this regular meeting of Cumberland County Citizens United, departing from the usual format, however. We thank you all for coming. The general format is one by which each of the candidates, sitting alphabetically left to right, will be asked to introduce themselves, given 2 minutes or so. I say or so. If they take advantage, we'll jump in. They know that my reputation precedes me. After which, a number of prepared questions will be given to the candidates. We'll ask that each one of them respond to each question. And we'll do that alphabetically and then in reverse order for question number 2 as we try to strike a balance of fairness. After those questions have been asked and answered, we'll open the session up, time remaining, to members of the audience. All you need to do is to rise and be recognized. Just raise your hand and stand up and I'll recognize you, ask your question, and we'll again ask each of the panelists, each of the candidates to respond. With that, members of those of you who would be mayor will ask that you take 2 minutes each, and the timekeeper is sitting in front of you. He'll show you a 30-second warning and he'll let you know when the time has expired. Ms. Applewhite, we'll begin with you. And we're going to pass the microphone down to you.
Good morning, everyone. Special thanks to Jeffrey being here this morning and to the CCCU. Your efforts throughout this community have not gone unnoticed. From your fight against annexation to your recent involvement downtown at the City Hall to say no due taxes. So I appreciate everything that you do in the community. For those that you that don't know me, my name is Val Applewhite. I've had the honor and privilege of serving on the City Council for the last 6 years as a District 7 representative. But I'm a lifelong public servant. I came to Fayetteville on active duty with my husband and my 11-month-old son who wasn't quite walking yet, and I welcomed my second son here. I'm a businesswoman. I am a mother. I'm a taxpayer. I invested in this community by buying a home when I was still on active duty. I am committed to this city. What's at stake during this election is who you can trust and who you know and who will fight for you. For far too long, the voices of the ordinary citizen in this community have gone unheard. And that's what my campaign is about. It's about leadership. It's who's ready to get the job done day one, not trying to figure it out because there's far too much at stake in our community today. Leadership is key. Experience is key. I've listened to your voices. I fought for you, and I intend to do so when I am the next mayor of Fayetteville. Thank you.
Good morning, and for those of you that I haven't met, I am Kirk Devier. I'm a candidate for mayor. Again, as Val mentioned, I want to thank the Cumberland County Citizens United for hosting this event today, but more importantly, I want to thank all of you for coming. It's this type of citizens involvement or community involvement that will make our community stronger. Over the last several months, I've been out in the community listening more than I've been talking. I've attended over 90 community watch meetings, attended neighborhood barbecues, fish fries, community crime prevention events, knocked on hundreds of doors, visited churches, and talked with small business owners. But I've also been blessed with meeting some very unique people. You know, people like Stella Mullins, Joyce Carpenter, Michael Hawley, John Decker, as well as some of you here. It's become crystal clear to me that the citizens of Fayetteville truly care about this community and want to see it become better. To me, this is the best part of the campaign. It's why I want to serve as your next mayor, is to help make a difference in people's lives and make this community stronger. Today, you're going to hear many issues discussed by all the candidates. As a citizen of Fayetteville and a candidate for mayor, I believe there are 2 most important issues that we face: reducing crime and building a stronger economy. These 2 issues go hand in hand. We must commit ourselves to tackling these issues head on because we need immediate results in both of these critical areas. I intend to focus my time and energy in these two areas and not on things that divide us. I believe it will take a new leader to step forward, keep us focused, foster teamwork, and provide a unified vision for the city of Fayetteville. Thank you for hosting this forum again, and I look forward to the discussion here today.
I am Charles Reagan. I was born about a half a mile right down the road here. We've been in Cumberland County off and on all our life. My commitment would be to the citizens of this community. I feel like that the crime issue is something that the plan of attack should not be broadcast. You don't tell your enemy how you're going to attack them. You put up cameras, they go somewhere else. You know, you've got a right to protect yourselves. You need to do it. We need to come together as a community, not as a government. The city of Fayetteville, I keep hearing about Fayetteville. Just exactly what is Fayetteville without the city, you know. I'm not a good public speaker. I am cold, a little bit nervous, but yeah, I was the vice president of this group when we started it up. Kind of dropped the ball initially because we thought that one lawsuit would cover everybody. Nobody ever expected that there would be a deal made behind closed doors. And everybody knows the quote that governments that meet in private are a threat to a free people. And we are facing that threat today by governments meeting in behind closed doors. So let's open up the doors. Let's get it out in public. Economic development is becoming economic devastation for the taxpayers. So I'm Charles Reagan. I'm running for office of mayor. Thank you.
Robertson.
Thank you, Jeff. It is a pleasure to be here with you. I do appreciate the invitation. My name is Nat Robertson. Know many of you. Many of you may know me. I've served 4 terms on the Fayetteville City Council, 3 at large, which encompasses the entire city. Of course, the city was much smaller back then, and 1 in a district. And I think no matter who you ask up here on this panel, you're going to hear some of the same priorities. So let's look as if the editorial that appeared this week, let's look at this panel as if you're hiring the next CEO, as if you are actually interviewing us to see who's going to fill that position. And I want to be your CEO. I've got the experience, certainly have the time in. I am accessible. I've been a member of this community since elementary school, and I'm willing to serve. And I would hope that you will take all of this into consideration, plus what you want out of your public servant in hiring the next CEO for the city of Fayetteville. I appreciate your support and look forward to speaking with you again and learning more about you. Thank you.
Finally, Paul Williams.
Thank you. I am Paul Williams. I previously served District 2 for City Council for 2 years. I had replaced a 10-year incumbent who said it was unbeatable, especially for me. I had, next time I had won an election, it was in District 6 against an 18-year incumbent, and again I was told it could not happen. But I did. Now I'm running for mayor, and they tell me I don't have a chance, and they tell you that I don't have a chance, but don't believe it. I am one of the few that up here that have any ideas to our most serious problem. And that is high crime, high unemployment, and our serious accident rate. In 1 year alone, we had 9 pedestrians killed. In fact, we had a city council candidate, Tom Parent, who had got killed by a high-speed automobile while he was riding his motorcycle on Yankin Road. But anyway, I grew up in Lafayette Village. I was born and raised here. I grew up with 8 brothers. My mom had no girls. I guess they were trying for a girl. I'm the second youngest. Started my roofing and gutter business 27 years ago with no money. And again, wasn't given much encouragement as to be a success with little experience and little money. but I kept after it. It was a dream, and I just asked God for a way to provide for a future family and be able to take care of myself and them, and that I would give Him the credit. So I think I'm doing that right now, but giving Him the credit for where I'm at today. I do have 5 wonderful children. 2 oldest are boys and 3 youngest are girls, and 3 youngest girls play softball. And I really enjoy my time with them, and I really don't look forward to being your mayor. I'm probably the only one up here that doesn't really want to be your mayor. I'd rather be with them. But in the past 3 months, I've seen some of the things going on with city government, and this is my hometown as much as anybody. And I really believe I got some solutions to how to fix the problems that most seriously affect us, starting with jobs. And that's the biggest part of my campaign. It's the centerpiece of my campaign is jobs, and how do we get more jobs, and also higher wages. And that's going to come through more economic freedom. Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll ask now, as I begin with the questions, that the audience refrain from any display of applause or whatnot during this session. Let's let each of the candidates answer the questions, after which, if you like, you can applaud. We'll move on to the next question. They'll have the microphone. I'll just holler and scream, okay? If you'll pass this down to Ms. Applewhite.
Again, we're asking the same question of all the candidates. Val Applewhite.
Yes, sir.
It's the consensus of the citizens of this community that crime and jobs are probably the most pressing challenges in the years ahead. What is your vision, your plan, or position on combating crime?
Okay. I would agree with the citizens' view that crime and job creation in our community are our priorities. Not one before the other. Those are 2 issues that we have to work together. In order to address crime, it's not just something that the city council can do. There has to be accountability from the top down. When I say from the top down, we have to include our judges in this fight. We have to include our court system in this fight. We have to include the DA. We included the Cumberland County Commissioners, the City Council, and the citizens. We're in this together. On the City Council, we do have a new police chief, and he's continuing to expand on our community policing strategy. He's had great success with it, bringing in the citizens to combat crime, because at the end of the day, we have to take responsibility for our neighborhoods and our community, because the criminals are well organized and they're doing that. The time that I've been on City Council, I've worked hard to fully fund the police department. I was the one that made the motion to put cameras on the cars, on our police cars. I've been fighting for police substations since I've been on council, particularly as crime has migrated in Western Fayetteville. You know that I have done that, and I'm continuing to fight for that presence. Crime just moves around our city. And to connect that back to economic development, when we are able to bring more jobs to this community, that will help. Employed people are busy working and not coming in our houses, because they come in my home 2 times and taking the things that I've worked hard for. So it's personal for me. I know it's personal for you, including everyone from the top down to each person sitting in this audience. It's about accountability. Thank you.
Mr. Vivier, hold the applause, please. What is your vision, plan, or position on combating crime?
Thank you, Jeff. And that's a great question, as I talked about earlier. I believe that is, and I stated it months ago, that crime is our number 1 priority. And I'll tell you that I believe it's an epidemic. I believe we have to take dramatic steps. And some of these steps are going to be uncomfortable. We're going to, as a community, have to come together and be willing to make some compromises, all of us, across all community, all segments of this community, to fight this epidemic, because it is an epidemic. You know, we talk about creating jobs, we'll reduce crime. There's a lot of methods that we need to look at for crime. There's a lot of steps that we need to take. The first one that we're seeing is we need to have that presence. As we look at what Chief Medlock has begun to put in place, we're starting to see some of those results. The preliminary results, we're seeing reductions. We need to continue to reinforce what he's doing and continue to look for other lessons learned from across communities that are doing things that are preventing crime. the presence. Do we need more police officers on the street? We're going to hear that from Chief Medlock. We as the mayor and city council need to be prepared to take action on that, on those recommendations when he makes those. We need to continue, it's not just the presence of the officers on the streets and presence within the court systems and within the judicial system. It's also, we have to look at not just the presence, but we have to look at working together as a community so that it is not just the cops on the streets. It's the judges, it is the sheriff's departments, it is multiple citizens across the community coming together just like the community watch meetings. We have to look at force multipliers that will help those police officers. We have to look at the technology. We have to look at things like the cameras and those items across the street. And I think that is my time, so I will end on that note.
Mr. Reagan, what is your vision, your plan, or position on combating crime?
I'll start with we need to call Batman. I guess, because crime is something we're always going to have. I feel like crime comes hand in hand with out of control development, high density development. I like to see some of the zoning and building plans take a different direction in Fayetteville and Cumberland County. We got a problem we definitely have a problem with no jobs, but we have another problem that we got a lot of people out there that have a felony in their background. Nobody will hire. We had some people when our company got taken over by a larger company that have been working for our company 15, 20 years driving a truck. They did background checks on them, found out they had a felony, and fired them after 15, 20 years of excellent service. So if you got a felony, you're pretty much a criminal. You have no choice but to pick up a life of crime. So that's something that our government needs to address. I've seen a lot of fine young men come and ask me, you guys got any job openings? I said, we do, but if you got a felony background, we can't hire you. He said, well, I paid my dues, I'm ready to move on. So, I mean, that is an element in the crime situation that there's no cure for. Were you aware of that, Bill? How many people in this area have felonies? A lot of them. You can have a felony, I can get a felony for putting false information on my ticket. I work at a scrapyard. But yeah, fighting crime is going to be a community plus government, police. Because more times than not, I have a world of respect for the police, but a lot of times they're just showing up as a clerk with a gun after the fact. So yeah, we got to get more proactive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Matt Robertson, what is your vision, plan, or position on combating crime?
Allow me to start by saying I'm not the police chief. That's not my career, it's not my profession, but I'm an administrator. And I should be able to look at the police chief and the recommendations he's making and make sure it's fair for the city, fair for the residents, and doesn't bankrupt the city. We're talking about adding police officers. If that's the recommendation he comes up with, I think what we need to know is what's it cost and how can we afford to do it. Taking a realistic approach to this, we may have to cut something else. We might have to find that money somewhere else to make sure that we have the police officers patrol the streets. So I can tell you when I was on city council back in the 90s, we employed mobile substations where we would actually bring out, park in a parking lot or a vacant lot, and allow the officers from this area to use that mobile patrol station to work out of. It's the presence of the police officers that would drive crime somewhere else. We've got to work the hot spots, we've got to listen to the professionals, and I'll tell you, I don't have the key, but I'll find the money sources to make sure that it happens.
And finally, Paul Williams, what's your vision, your plan, or position on combating crime?
Thank you, Jeff. Unlike the other candidates, I don't think we need to listen to the professionals at first. I think we need to listen to them and take their advice as far as considered. But what we found recently is the city police chief said that he works within the constraints of his budget. Well, then we turn to the city manager, who is the one who gives him guidance, because that's his boss. And what he had said was that we needed a 1.5 cent tax increase to hire 15 more police officers. Well, that tax increase did not go through, so they foregone that grant for 15 more police officers. We cannot come up with $1.5 million to fund 15 more police officers. I think what it implied to me is that we're holding this city hostage to crime and a tax increase. If I'm elected mayor, I'm going to insist that we hire 100 new officers. That equates to 33 approximately per shift. We need for our police officers to be proactive as opposed to reactive. In 2011, just the traffic tickets that were written for speeding was over 8,000. Last year, 2012, it was 5,000. It's a good indication they've got less time to check for speeders. We need them checking for criminals. They need to be proactive. We need to fill the courts, fill the hallways. I'm not concerned about their job. That's their job over there at the courthouse. If we've got to fill them till they're falling out on the streets or till they build camps, whatever, I don't care. We need to be proactive, and we ought not let the criminals run wild. Most recently, we had this operation in Fayetteville, Cumberland County, called Operation Blue Thunder. It was a 3-day operation that was cut short. They bragged about how successful it was, but they had to cut it short because there wasn't room in the jail. What does that tell you? That tells you that there's another day's worth of criminals out there that they let go. They're still out there roaming the streets. I don't know about y'all, but I think law enforcement is the top priority of our city government. It should be funded first. It should not be used as a reason to raise taxes. If you're going to raise taxes, it's going to be items in the budget of least priority. Law enforcement is not least priority in my book. And I don't think it should be in anybody else's book running for office. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Hold on to the mic. The next question, we're going to do it in reverse order. Unless he wants it. And he'll just pass it on down the line as we go in reverse. The next question also deals with crime. What initiative would you recommend to combat gangs in our community? Paul?
Well, and that's one of the areas that we would need some advice on from the experts who are familiar with the gangs. I'm not. I've not been in a gang, so I'm not familiar with it. So we would need to talk to the chief and to others who are familiar with it and consider the recommendations and maybe act on them. I would like to speak a little bit about jobs and how that plays a big role. If you're not working, if you're at home doing nothing, you're going to want to hang out with your buddies, and then you've got a gang. Whether it's an official gang or not, they're hanging out with their buddies. I have a plan for more jobs. It requires less government, and it depends more on you as individuals to go out and better your lot in life, to be able to be wildly successful in what you do to provide for you and your family. And when we have something like the UDO, the United Development Ordinance, it's just ridiculous. It started out over 500 pages 2 years ago when it was adopted by City Council. It's over 700 pages now. Just one little excerpt I put on Facebook the other day said that if you're going to do a new development, you're going to clear land and build a new building, well, if you've got to cut some trees down, per 1 caliber inch, it's going to cost you $100 that you got to pay to the city of Fayetteville to put in their tree fund. We ought to be patting them on the back saying, what can we do to get government out of your way? If I'm elected mayor, what I would do is do everything I can to get city government out of the way of private investment in this community. I would see private investment, private investors, and individuals in this community as the way to success, not more rules and regulations by city council to squash because of one, maybe what I would call idiot. We go in and enact all these rules for everybody. I don't want to do that. We need just a simple nuisance ordinance that's going to shut them down. And I'm here to say I think I was the first one in Fayetteville as a city council member to have a homeowner-owned property shut down for nuisance abatement, by starting nuisance abatement proceedings. Within a week, the house was sold. And I think that's the way we need to go, folks. We need to believe in people instead of not believing in everybody. Thank you.
We would ask the candidates to try to be responsive to the questions. You all will decide, of course, whether or not they are. We'll be dealing with other subjects as we go along. Matt Robertson, what initiative would you recommend to combat gangs?
I think we've got to look at 3 different approaches. One has got to be education. Second, we have to take it into the schools. And then thirdly, I agree with Paul, it's got to have to do with economic development and jobs, getting kids off the streets and to work so they're making money and they're doing the right thing in the community. Again, I'm not your criminal expert here. We have a chief of police And I look forward to working with him.
Charles Reagan, what initiatives, if any, would you recommend to combat gangs?
Well, I just don't, I'd be reiterating a lot of that's already been said, but I would like to point out one thing. When you think of gang can be as small as 3 people. So when you see 3 people hanging around a quick stop, that's a little gang, for real. I've heard too many cases where friends I've known walk out of a store, one guy hits him, the other guy tries to take him down, the other guy grabs the wallet, they're off in a matter of seconds. And he's left with a broke jaw. So watch your surroundings when you go into a place and when you come out. And how to combat it is anybody's guess. But thank you.
Kurt Devier, initiatives you would recommend to combat gangs?
Well, Jeff, that's another good question. Gangs are a key part of how we're going to, what we need to look at to reduce crime. One of the things is, as I moved around these community watch meetings, you hear the stories of the mothers who are talking about their children getting recruited into gangs, and you're hearing that, they can't get to their house because there's gang activity going on the street, or you talk to business owners and they've got graffiti everywhere. It is an epidemic, and it ties directly into our crime issue as well as it ties into the economic development when you look at it hinders business activities. But I'll tell you, you're probably going to hear a lot about, one thing, Chief Medlock has talked a lot about some programs that he used in Charlotte. And I believe we need to let him try to implement those programs and see the effect and measure the effect of those to see if we can lower some of our gang involvement. But one of the other things, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about mentoring programs and youth mentoring programs and how we do that. Well, I'm going to offer to you that we might need to change that dynamic a little bit and turn that dynamic and look at, right now, there is a great youth mentoring program going on right now. It's called the Gangs. And right now, they are the ones that have a better program than we have. So we have to change that dynamic, because what's happening is it's cool to go get picked up by the police, get put right out of jail because we don't have the systems in place to keep them in place, and then they're making more money. So why do I need to go get a job making minimum wage or above minimum wage when I can make more money being in a gang as a lookout or something else? So there is a mentoring program out there, but unfortunately, it's the wrong youth mentoring program. We have to change that dynamic. We have to break that cycle. And the only people that are going to break that cycle is we as a community.
And Belle Applewhite, what initiatives would you recommend to combat gangs?
Thank you, Jeff. One of the worst days I've ever had on city council was going to community meetings and having 2 mothers literally cry in my arms, asking me to help them save their children. I have a son in high school. I understand this. I've been working on this for 6 years. Years ago, I talked about a curfew for our children because our children are often victims of crimes as much as they commit crimes. But this is what we need to understand. Our children are not criminals. Our children need guidance. They need help. I get the opportunity to go across the country at NLC conferences, and there's simple things that communities are doing. For example, our rec centers are closed up tight at 9 o'clock at night. We pay $4 million a facility, and they're closed at 9 o'clock. Why aren't we opening our doors and having things like midnight basketball when kids, young men, are probably out committing crimes? Those are things that people across the country are doing. Mentoring programs. Let's stop talking about it and do it. I brought youth council to the city council several times, but we want to start talking about streets and lights. Those are all important. But if we cannot save our children in this community, what is it all about? What is it all about? My son's a 10th grader at Westover High School. This is a real problem. It's fixes that we can do without spending another dime. We just have to be committed to it, and I am.
Thank you, Ms. Applewhite. Hold on to the mic.
Yes, sir.
We'll begin the next responses to follow-up questions. Sir? We're not going to do it for the first one? This one?
Yeah, it goes to me.
Oh, okay. Let's start with, Kurt. If you're ready. Unemployment in our community is above the state average. What is your answer? Kirk Devier.
Well, I definitely think, that's one of the main priorities I talked about earlier is creating a stronger economy. If we create a stronger economy, we're going to lower that unemployment. And that unemployment, when you look across statistically, you can look across the nation, you look across our state, you look across our community, small businesses are the one that create those jobs. The way we're going to move ourselves out of this unemployment issue, and it isn't government's responsibility to create a job. We've got to create a stronger economy. So what we have to do is we have to enable these small businesses, like me, like some of the candidates up here that are small business owners. We have to enable those small business owners to have the freedom to be able to grow their businesses. Now, there's a balance between good policy and good business. We have to find that balance so that we can create an environment that allows smaller business, because that's where I believe we're going to create the jobs. If you look across any segment of the nation, those jobs in larger forms are created at small businesses. Yes, we can recruit the Goodyears of the world or retain the Goodyears of the world and recruit the Sykes business of the world, and the Chamber of Commerce and the Alliance are doing a good job of that. They can do better. But we as elected officials have to create that environment for those small businesses, whether it's sign ordinances or whether it's taxes or ease of business or making it easier for the small business owner to navigate through the red tape on how to actually conduct business in the city of Fayetteville. That's what we have to do. We have to allow and create that opportunity and create that environment so that small business owners can hire another person. I know just in the last year in my marketing company, we've only been able to hire one person. And that's what we have to do. We have to create that opportunity for small businesses, because that's where our job growth is going to come from. Because we can spread it across the city, spread it across the wider base, but we have to make it easier for small businesses, which is why I want to have an advocate on city staff that small businesses can open, that can pick up the phone and call them if they need help. But it starts at the small business level.
Reagan. Unemployment in our county is above the state average. What is your answer?
Turn back to clock to 1970, I guess, whenever the Black & Deckers, Purelators, and Goodyear first came here. What brought them here in the first place? People here were willing to work. There was opportunity for growth and expansion. Then the 90s, 2000s, taxes ran them off. Goodyear threatened to leave here in 1984 due to taxes. So, I mean, we cannot extort money out of businesses that want to come here. We just need to let them come and work with them. That's the only thing I'm looking at. Maybe Fayetteville does need some Reaganomics, and I'm Mr. Reagan to bring the economics.
There you go.
So, thank you.
Matt Robertson, unemployment in our community is above the state average. What's your answer?
Well, I think we have to make it easier for businesses to do business. We have to have someone that understands what it means to run a business, what it means to make payroll, what it means to have the daily operations, the responsibility of success in that business, and look forward to doing business for serving people. I believe that one of the hurdles that stops businesses from growing and expanding and the organic growth that we like to see is our UDO. Paul touched on it a minute ago. The Unified Development Ordinance cripples businesses from growing. And I believe that we've got to revisit that. If we don't make the standard uniform with what the county has currently got, then we should look at some modifications, or at least having a fast and fair appeals process to that UDO. Right now, if somebody wants to do something outside of that UDO, the appeals process can take anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. If you're a developer sitting on a piece of property with $5 million worth of materials, you cannot afford to wait 6 weeks to get an answer from an appeal. We've got to correct this. And it starts with the UDO to make businesses easier to do business with.
And Mr. Williams, unemployment in the community is above the state average. What's your answer?
Oh, I got several to that. First of all, it's not city council enacting new rules and regulations. As mayor, if I'm elected, I'll be the only one elected citywide based on the issues I've run on. I've been very clear about why and what I would do if mayor. An economist once said that those in places, positions of elective office or what have you, try to make heaven on earth. And in reality, what they end up doing is making it hell on earth. You make it so difficult to do things that then you end up with a situation we're in, high crime, high unemployment. Several things I would do. First of all, I would not make the appeals process easier for UDO. The UDO's got to go. We've done 1970s, we didn't have it. 1970s, we didn't have a 60-page sign ordinance. You're elected or candidates running for office, you've seen some of the yard signs, but yet you go down Hay Street and you cannot see a sign of a business. There's so many trees and landscaping taking up parking places. Yet you can get over $100 in parking fees if you work down there. That's not as important, your job downtown, as a tree being parked in that parking place. We see that throughout the whole city. That's why the UDO even came about, was to protect trees. There was no consideration of protecting jobs. They passed these rules and regulations like putting an extra straw on a camel's back. It looks like a simple straw and it's fine, we've got to move more. They put it on. They put another one on. Before long, you have nothing but the most successful in business. So I've had a city manager one time tell me, Paul, I know businesses are doing great in the community. Yeah, that's because they don't have much competition. You squash competition. You get higher prices when you have less people in business, less developers. What I would do in the home building industry is make it as simple as whenever I grew up in Lafayette Village, we had a dirt road. We had power lines. We didn't have sidewalks, but my mom and dad, with 9 boys, could afford a home. But now a soldier has to move to surrounding counties to afford a home. We ought not make it heaven on earth, because in reality what we end up doing is making it hell on earth. Thank you.
Okay, Val Applewhite. Unemployment in our community is above the state average. What's your answer?
So I'm not going to talk about UDO. I'm going to talk about Hire Fayetteville First. That's an initiative that Fayetteville City Council, myself, and Councilman DJ here, we brought to council. It was passed unanimously. That creates jobs here locally using our local tax dollars. It's a job creation policy. We need transparency in our contracts to understand where our dollars are spent and turn them right back around in this community. Our State Veterans Park. There's a landscaper from another city coming to Fayetteville to do that. At every light, I see a landscaping company. Let's take care of what we have control over. Also, in our city hall, we can clear up the red tape. It's difficult for businesses. If you take the permit process, why don't we have a one-stop permit process? I've talked to many local business owners that says, Val, I can't make my way through City Hall. That's simple. That helps our businesses be more productive when you get the red tape out of the way. And the other thing is we need to listen to business owners. There's about 10, 15, 20 business owners that sit at the table and they tend to make all of the decisions for this community. There are smaller business owners who want their what heard? Their voices heard for a change. It's not the small group. There's a lot of talent in this community. Starting with Hire Fayetteville First. That's what I'm going to do as mayor. Let's stop sending our tax dollars somewhere else. Charlotte doesn't do it. Raleigh doesn't do it. They make you have a residence in their community to get their money. We're going to take care of home first. That's where you start to help local businesses.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll hand it to Mr. Robertson. We'll begin the responses to our next question, which also deals with the economy. The state, county, and city already has tax incentives to help attract businesses. What other measures would you recommend to attract business?
Well, I think it all goes back, again, I'm going to point to the UDO. I think it goes back to making it easy for businesses to do business in Fayetteville. As long as we keep hindering the businesses, slowing them down, putting them, nobody's going to want to come here and do business. We are fortunate to have Fort Bragg here. We're fortunate to have a fairly stable economy for now. But we've got to look at other revenues. We've got to be able to make Fayetteville a place of growth. And we can do that by making the city and PWC and the county all work together, along with the tax incentives, to bring growth to Fayetteville. And I think that's one of the things the UDO completely stops folks in their tracks. They find it hard to do business here, and we've got to make it easier to do business in the city.
Well, thank you. The United States, over the course of history, had the fastest rate of growth in a short period of time. Hong Kong is one that has the second highest per capita income to the United States in like 70 short years. The two things they got in common is freedom. We don't need select incentives for businesses. We need an open playing field for all businesses. Unless they're a nuisance, then they should be able to come in and easily do business. When we make it difficult for them, then the ones who have the deepest pockets are the ones who are going to be in business. The ones who are struggling, the ones that are just starting out, the ones coming up out of the ground, it's most difficult for them. We need to get government out of the way. It's pretty simple to me. And if I'm elected mayor, I'm going to do all I can to move government out of the way, keep low taxes, and try to encourage businesses to come. We don't want to, like I said, single them out. Particular business, you get this tax advantage, then we ignore all the ones that are here in Fayetteville. That doesn't send a clear message to them. We need to make it advantageous for everyone. I mentioned the sign ordinance, just our heavily traveled roads. They're gold mines. But yet, unless you've got a lot of money and a lot of influence and you donate to these candidates, it's hard for you to get something rezoned. If I'm elected mayor, if we got roads with 30,000 cars a day to go by there, we as a city government need to go in and rezone those commercial, the ones that are residential. Get government out of the way. Only thing they got to do is open up shop or sell it to somebody that wants to. But as it stands right now, it's a long, cumbersome process. It requires money only for you to go before council and for them to tell you no, unless you got undue influence with it. That's where corruption comes in. When you got so many rules and regulations that it makes it difficult, then you have those who have all the money that are able to grease the wheels for themselves so they can continue to do what they do and lessen in the competition. Thank you.
Okay, we'll pass that on down to Ms. Applewhite. State, county, and city already offer tax incentives to help attract business. What other measures would you recommend?
I'm not going to talk about the UDO. I've had the opportunity to sit with businesses when they come to Fayetteville, Cumberland County, that dinner where you're trying to close the deal and attract businesses here. The chamber coordinates with the city and the county to decide what sort of packages we're going to put out there to be competitive. And oftentimes when you're at that table, the deal, they'll start talking about things like crime, maybe not so much. They'll talk about our workforce. So it's not just about tax incentives, it's about our community at large, right? I think that we need to also relook our relationship with the chamber, because for those of you who don't know, we've kind of outsourced economic development and job creation to the chamber. There's a report called the Garner Report that said that perhaps the chamber should look at how it interacts with the city. Are they truly working just to attract jobs, right? Relooking our relationship to make sure that we're getting the best that we can from the chamber, that they're looking at our educational institutions to make sure that we have a prepared and qualified workforce. Those are the things that people look at when they decide to relocate to our community. Tax incentives are one. Relooking our relationship with the Cumberland County Chamber is two. But I think that Fayetteville, Cumberland County needs to petition to Raleigh in a more regional approach. Harnett County, Hope County, we need to go to Raleigh as a force, as a region to advocate for jobs. We need to go to the Department of Commerce with the governor and ask, we have the greatest workforce in this community. Why don't we have more jobs? So we handle what we can here locally, but we've got to get to Raleigh and make it happen as well.
Thank you, ma'am. And Kirk Devier, state, county, and city already have tax incentives they offer to businesses. What other measures would you recommend?
Attracting businesses to our community is definitely a top priority on how you're going to create a stronger economy. There's no doubt. Several years ago, I served as a chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. It's one of the things I did to give back to the community and provide some community service and work in that space. And a lot of those times, you know, the Chamber does a great job. The Chamber now, the Alliance, which is the economic development arm of the Chamber, has a partnership with the county, the city, PwC, and together, there's been some great successes across our community. Could we do better? Yes. But you can point to those successes, the retention of Goodyear, Sykes that's going to bring 500 jobs here. What we need to do, and Ms. Applewhite mentioned it, the Garner Report. The Garner Report was just commissioned a little over a year ago. And what that did is provide an economic development plan. And one of the things that it talked about in there is diversity. We need to move away from not just looking at the military side, but we need to look at other industry segments. We need to target those segments. I sat in on, as Ms. Applewhite talked about, I sat in on some of those meetings as well when I was a chamber chair, and since then, as a business leader in our community when businesses would come here. What we have to do is listen after those, find the ones that we lost, just like a good coach does in a game. You go back and look at why you lost or what you could do better. So look at the points that why we didn't win that business or why that business didn't move here. Analyze that and say, how can we affect that? And we're talking about all these task force and all these different things. Why don't we put a small group of business leaders around those issues and address those issues so it's easier to do business here in Fayetteville? We have to lower those obstacles. We have to reduce those obstacles so we can continue to recruit the types of businesses that will enhance our economy and make us stronger so that we're more diversified across our economy so we can weather the bad times and move through the upward swing of our economy.
Thank you, Kirk. And finally, Charles Reagan. State, county, and city already offer tax incentives to help business. What other measures would you recommend?
Folks, I'm not going to bore you with rhetorical situations. One thing that did disturb me, we have automated ourselves into economic deficit. That's the bottom line. Even farming now, there's no manual labor. It's all GPS, automatic crop picking. Those were jobs that a lot of you folks in this room, that's how you made your living 60 years ago. You worked on farms, you picked cotton, you picked tobacco. There are none of those jobs today. I don't know if anybody's noticed it, but it was on TV, the new teller machines coming out now. Have you seen those? You actually go up to the teller, the ATM machines, what I'm talking about. You get a real person now. One of the credit unions has already gone to it. There goes those teller jobs. So we're up against a wall. We're up against an automated wall of electronics. How do you compete with it? I'll leave you with that thought.
Thank you, sir. Actually, you're going to begin with our next responses. Traffic is steadily increasing in our community. Is expanding public transportation the answer?
Absolutely not. I see public transportation as an opportunity for disaster. If you look all around the world, people put bombs on buses. So why do we want to create that situation here in our community? I don't get it. Somebody's got to pay for that, but the transportation is paid basically out of $10 off the car tax, am I correct, Bill? And some other tax money, but I can't afford to provide transportation for other people. I mean, we're all supporting people here, all of us. If you're working and paying taxes, you're helping support other people. You got a right to be free without government interference. Tax is a government interference. Yes, we do have to pay for services, but basic services, not extended services. During a time of economic boom, like we experienced in the 60s up till the collapse in 2000, and a little before the decline, everything was okay. Well, the problem was then there were jobs and wages were going up, benefits were good and everything. Okay, the jobs and benefits and wages have come down, the cost of living has not come down. How do we get the cost of living back down? It don't look like it's gonna happen. So we're up against the wall. We're just gonna have to deal with it as a community, as a city, but we can't turn it into 100% socialism, and that's exactly where we're headed. Thank you.
Mr. Robertson, traffic is steadily increasing. Is expanding public transportation the answer?
I do believe that is one of the answers, yes. And we should promote our fast system, more of a regional system rather than a local system with some buy-in from our partners in the county and Spring Lake and Hope Mills, and be able to take these routes in places that they don't currently go. I also believe that our system should be promoted to gain riders of choice, not riders of need. And I believe our perception of the bus system currently is that it's the poor people trying to get to work. And there is some truth to that. But we need to go green. We need to be looking at other options and promote this system, not only for those who need it, but for those who want it, for a more convenient, better way to get somewhere without the traffic hassles.
Okay, Mr. Williams, you're next. Traffic is steadily increasing. Is expanding public transit the answer?
I don't believe so. As Mr. Reagan had pointed out, I think we're all individually responsible for our own transportation. My first car when I was 16, I bought for $200. And it gave me an incentive to get a job, to be able to pay for the insurance and the car. And as long as you can provide that public transportation, people have no problem getting around not having a job. You need to keep that incentive out there. They need to stay hungry where they need to want to work. They need to stay needing a ride. First it's yourself, then it's family, then it's church. The last solution for transportation for everybody should be city government, because they want to fail. Especially when you annex as big areas as we have. They're not providing those bus routes there. They can't afford it. In fact, our mayor bragged recently that they had a significant investment in their bus system. I wish he had said that about law enforcement, but it was their bus system that was more important than hiring those extra 15 officers. And I don't think our priority should be on the public transportation. As a council member, I was instrumental. It was me who said, why don't we punch Hope Mills Road through to Glennsford Drive? And I was told it couldn't happen because of politics. Residents in the neighborhood called Rage, Residents Against Glennsford Extension. It wasn't that I didn't care about those people. It's that I care about the whole city. We need to open up these roads. We need more of them. If we got a road that's got 50,000 cars, we need to split it up in half. Get another road running parallel somewhere to get that traffic through there. If it has to take my house to do it, so be it. Whenever we take that traffic and then take advantage of it with commercial development, get government out of the way, open those land, those properties, those parcels up for investment, you're going to see job creation, and pretty quick, without government intervention. We have got to move government out of the way to get things rolling. Now, if we're somewhere like here and we got tons of money, by all means. But all we're going to do is just throw fuel on the fire by taking more money from people in this community and encourage them to leave. Go somewhere else. Thank you.
Ms. Applewhite, traffic continues to steadily increase. Is public transit the answer?
With growth comes more traffic. I've served on the Fayetteville Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, and one of the things that resulted from that were corridor studies with DOT. We looked at Ramsey Street, Rayford Road, to see where the growth was and make fixes to handle the traffic. I do believe that public transportation is a solution. Public transportation is also essential to business, attracting businesses here. That's one of the things that we're judged on, whether or not we have an effective public transportation system. I was saying out here in Western Fayetteville, and Jeff, you've been a part of this, we finally have a route extended that's coming up Strickland Bridge Road. Finally. You all been asking for that for years, and Bill and Ted and I have been fighting for that for years. So if we are able to take people out of their cars with an effective transit system, I think it's a good thing. For our soldiers who come here, most of them are one-car family. When the husband or wife takes the vehicle on to Fort Bragg, the mother or the father or whomever is left in our community with no way to get around. So it's just not about traffic control, it's about quality of life. It's about businesses. It's about making our community better, whether it's out of necessity, right? Or whether it's just good old plain business, okay? So I do think that adding more buses, more transit to our streets will not only relieve the congestion, but will improve the quality of life.
And the traffic is steadily increasing, it's expanding, public transportation the answer.
And I think transit is part of the answer. There was a citizen survey in March of this year, and two of the top issues that it talked about were street maintenance and imagine what? Traffic. And with growth comes traffic. It's kind of that, dog chasing his tail a little bit. We want to grow, but we have to have a plan for how we're going to manage that traffic. And I'll tell you that it's not just traffic on the main thoroughfares. What I'm hearing as I move around the community watch meetings is it's traffic within the communities. We have to look at working with the police to do some traffic calming within the communities as well. There's multiple components to the layers of traffic. Does transit help within the communities? No. But I do believe that transit will help on the main thoroughfares. And we have to continue that investment. I think it's part of what we do as a city. It's part of a city service that we provide. But I also think we have to look at how we can move to more of a partnership with some organizations out there. How can we work with an FSU or a Methodist college or an FTCC so that we're moving students back and forth, or we're moving those the people that want the higher education or additional education from point to point. We maybe have to look at the business side of it as well, and look at maybe Goodyear or some of these other larger companies that could utilize the bus routes to move people back and forth. That will eliminate some of the traffic that we have on our main thoroughfares. The other thing that we have to do is we have to reach back out to our other municipalities. At one time, Spring Lake was a partner with the city of Fayetteville. We have to get away from being in our silos and say we have to do this together. We can solve some of our transit issues together. We've got to reach back out to Spring Lake and say, come back to us. Mayor Ray, Chris Ray, come back to us. Hope Mills, Jackie Warner, come back to us. Come with us. Be part of the solution, and we can affect and eliminate some of the traffic on these thoroughfares if we do it together and look at the systems that we have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Applewhite. We'll begin responses to our final question, after which we'll turn to the audience for their questions. This is a complicated one.
Okay, ready.
Some of our 700-plus miles of city streets are in need of resurfacing.
Yes.
The annual budget calls for about $3.5 million for resurfacing. Current schedule allows for 25 to 30 years before repaving is necessary of some streets. How would we improve this schedule, and where would the money come from?
Great question. It is about funding. What I think the City Council has not done well enough is letting citizens know the priorities, the needs of our community, the state of our infrastructure. It hasn't been very clear. And it's all about funding. The last month or so, we experienced a lot of problems with stormwater and rain. That's competing for our dollars. Okay? Our streets, our unpaved streets are competing for our dollars. Where's the additional revenue going to come from? Well, I guess there's always the opportunity of putting a bond out there. There's always the opportunity of raising your taxes. But before we do any of that, we need to let you know the truth about the state of our city and let you be a part of making that decision. We can't escalate that. If anybody tells you right now that we can escalate paving those roads without new revenue, it simply is not true. We work through this every budget year because we hear it from you. There are citizens who want their private streets brought into the city. The resources are not there. Perhaps after we look at our partnerships with PwC, perhaps there are more resources there, but right now as we are, trust me, I've sat down with this 6 years trying to do exactly what that question asks. There are no new additional resources, and we need to let you know, or you need to let us know, how you want us to spend your tax dollars. Because if you ask someone right now whose property is affected by stormwater, they're going to tell you, I want you to fix stormwater. So that's up to you to tell us what we should do with the limited resources that we have.
Thank you, Ms. Applewhite. Now, Kurt, Debbie here, and I want to repeat this lengthy question, but we've got about 700 miles of city streets. The annual budget for repaving is $3.5 billion. Streets don't get repaired sometimes for 25 to 30 years. How do we step up the schedule, and where does the money come from?
Well, I think you saw I attended, I believe, and I don't want to be quoted, so I attended a majority of the budget meetings this year, and in previous years I've attended multiple budget meetings, and that is a question that comes up multiple times on how we're going to fund certain things. I think it gets back to priorities. Let's see, our citizen survey said streets are a priority. Matter of fact, they're number one on the priority along with traffic calming.